We have some breaking news to tell you about from the United States Supreme Court. Moments ago, in a 7-2 decision, the justices blocked the Trump administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. It is a complicated ruling, with the court asking a lower court to make some big decisions, but it is nonetheless a legal setback for the Trump administration, who wants to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport more migrants without standard due process. Joining us to help us understand this breaking news is MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Charlie is with us as well.
Nicole, I should always know better than to put my hair in a ponytail on a Friday night, because that's just asking for the Supreme Court to come to us. This decision, you mentioned due process, this decision is the court saying again that people who are immigrants, even if they are undocumented immigrants, even if they are alleged members of a Venezuelan gang, are entitled to that due process. The court is refusing here to say exactly how much notice somebody who is an alleged member of TNREATENZ is entitled to. But what they are saying is, we're going to continue our prior order that prevents the administration from taking a group of people that are being held in a detention facility in a certain area of Texas. These are the people that were previously boarded on buses that NBC News literally chased on their way up the highway to an airport and back around again. They cannot take those folks, put them on a plane to El Salvador. And the reason they can't do that is because the court wants a lower court to decide two things. How likely are the plaintiffs to succeed in their argument that the Alien Enemies Act is not fairly applied to them? What does the Alien Enemies Act mean, for example, when it talks about a predatory incursion or an invasion or a war? Has Trump fairly applied it to this set of facts? And they want the lower court to decide, are the plaintiffs likely to succeed on that? The second thing they want the appeals court to decide is how much notice these people are entitled to. And the Supreme Court is saying emphatically here, whatever that number is, 24 hours ain't enough. Go back to the drawing board and decide. And the final thing that they're saying, and this is really important, is that this injunction that they're continuing right now is going to last for some time. It's going to last until that lower court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, not only makes its decision, but until any petition for review by the Supreme Court is disposed of. We're used to thinking about all of these emergency cases that are percolating through the court. But you and I both know, in the ordinary course, it takes a long time for a case to go through the traditional appeals process. So this is a sign to the Trump administration, not only can't you do this now, but you might be stymied in doing this to this particular group of people for months to come. And you can't go into any other court in the country where you might have detainees and allege that 24 hours notice is going to be enough to give people the due process that the court here, a 7-person majority on this court, is reasserting is imperative to give not only to citizens, not only to undocumented immigrants, but even to alleged members of TNREATENZ.
Okay, let me ask you 3 questions. 1, does this only protect from deportation to El Salvador the people who were, does this do anything for the people that they already used the Alien Enemies Act to send to this brutal prison in El Salvador?
No. Those people are being, I don't want to say dealt with, but there is a separate court proceeding still in front of James Boasberg, who's the district court judge who originally had Alien Enemies Act proceedings in front of him. And one of the things that is being decided before him is, does he have jurisdiction even over the claims of people who are now in CCOT or other facilities in El Salvador?
But so this was about the Supreme Court telling those, and Von Hilliard, I think, was doing that great reporting, to turn the buses around, that you couldn't send them out. Boasberg also said, turn the planes around.
Boasberg did say, turn the planes around, and he was about to engage in some discovery about who was being contemptuous of his order when the Supreme Court vacated that order that he had issued saying, turn the planes around. Well, now the plaintiffs have come back before him, people representing those people who are now in El Salvador, and essentially said, okay, the Supreme Court told us that we had to file these cases in the places people were detained. Obviously, we can't do that for people who are in El Salvador already, and we have to file these cases in a particular way. We have to bring them as habeas corpus petitions. So we're going to do that for you now. And Boasberg has said to them, first I have to figure out whether I have jurisdiction, and what that turns on is, does the United States have what he calls constructive custody over these people in El Salvador? It depends on, is the U.S. sufficiently in control of them, even though, nominally speaking, they're in El Salvador? And he, at the last hearing, quoted back to the government lawyer Trump's interview with our colleague Kristen Welker and a number of other statements from folks in the administration that he said are a good indicator that the United States, despite all of the kabuki theater we've seen in Oval Office press availabilities, that yes, the United States does have constructive custody, but that issue has not yet been decided. Stay tuned for that.
So, Charlie, I mean, what we have here is an instance where the Supreme Court is saying some of the same things that protesters at Chuck Grassley's town halls are saying, which is due process. That we, and I know it's a very low bar, but we do still have today a 7-2 ruling that is in the vein of affirming due process rights in this country, even for people here illegally, as Lisa Rubin just said, even for people who are accused but not proven to be members of a gang.
That seems to be a very, very important point. Lisa explained this very, very well. I have a very, very quick question, though. Was it 7-2 or really was it 8-1? Because I'm just looking very, very quickly at it. I'm not the lawyer here, but it looks like Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurring opinion, and only Justice Alito wrote a dissent, which would suggest that you got to be 7 or 8 of the Supreme Court justices that say, wait, we are not prepared to ignore due process, and that this would come down basically a week after Steve.
We're joined by NYU history professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat, an expert on authoritarianism, the author of Strongmen Mussolini to the Present. Welcome, Ruth. This is one of those Fridays where you have all the conflicting signals, and we went through a lot of them to the top of the show. The pretty remarkable coalition against Trump's power grab at the Supreme Court, ruling again late today, but against a lot of these other moves. Your thoughts here and what he's trying to do or get away with?
So it's pretty remarkable that the same court that gave him immunity for official acts is now pushing back. And I think, you know, there is no parallel, Ari, for in early Putin or early Erdogan or early months of Orban for the speed and magnitude of what has happened to our democracy in just a few months. And, you know, the essence of authoritarianism is the executive trying to expand his power over the civil service, making it a tool of tool of his personal will because it's all loyalists. Of course, the judiciary is key, and also creating a personality cult. And Donald Trump is very attentive to imagery. And so having his face, you know, next to Lincoln's on the outside of buildings and giant format is certainly part of that, as is him trying to say that he's all powerful and really no one can stop him. And I think they're escalating this because of the legal resistance that's come on. And the reason, when you were talking about Abrego Garcia before, the reason he says, I could get him back, but I won't, is that if he said, okay, I could get him back and I will get him back, that would be seeming to bend to request that he be accountable. And his whole thing as a strongman is that he's above the law, that he's untouchable, and he doesn't have to respect domestic or international law because that's a sign of weakness in the autocratic mind.
And then you look at the way they pick their targets. He's talked about a lot of different perceived foes, but it's very notable now as we track 110 days, he's starting with what they perceive to be the weaker, softer targets in a lot of the retribution. Local officials or judges who people haven't really heard of. So they don't necessarily have an idea that, you know, maybe not all Americans know of and love Jack Smith, but his history, having prosecuted members of both parties, prosecuting John Edwards, a Democrat, for corruption, prosecuting war crimes at The Hague. There's a lot of evidence that he would be a tougher, sturdier foe with a lot of credentials, a lot of elite type powerful people going, that guy. But they go after the state judge. They go after a local mayor now. That trial continues. There were rumors about something else today, which is a news person I'm not going to confirm, but they involved questions about DOJ going after another person. And then, of course, Comey, which is reportable because they're announcing it. And as I said, the Seychelles photo would be laughable if the agenda weren't so anti-dissent and anti-democratic. So talk us through what's going on there. It's not necessarily day one, the doomsday of every prosecutor who's ever investigated him is immediately indicted like a movie. But it seems to be trying to push up and normalize the idea that this is what a government can do, that yes, James Comey will face whatever it is, his third probe.
Yeah, the Comey is very disturbing because, you know, in Turkey, for example, Erdogan has put forth hundreds of thousands of, they're called insult suits. It's like a genre of lawfare, autocratic lawfare. And a social media post, just observing something and recording it, as Comey did, can be grounds for, in Turkey, being imprisoned and put on trial. And again, 160,000 Turks have been subjected to this. And there are similar things that go on in Russia and all autocracies. So your other point about having lower level judges people are not familiar with, they haven't bonded with them. This is what autocrats do. They do test cases. They do test cases to see how the public responds, but also to show, as you said, that they can get anyone. So, in fact, it's huge news that was not, perhaps with all the other things going on, one of the hallmarks of authoritarianism is you start arresting the political opposition. And so the mayor of Newark was arrested on some kind of trumped up case, as it seems. And so this is, for me, looking at this was a red line that they crossed. And, you know, as far as the Wisconsin judge, you know, during the whole Biden administration years, the Trump and MAGA waged a very effective campaign to.
This is devastating for Trump. This loss is devastating. It's yet proof again that he isn't the king he thinks he is. And you know he's reacting to this terribly. Why has he been so unhinged today on social media, on True Social and what have you? Why? Because this is a big loss for him. And again, Trump takes this personally because this was one of the things he wanted to do. And also because, again, he sees the Supreme Court as his little plaything. Like it's his... You know how Trump's been talking about dollies and how, oh, maybe the little girls won't get as many dolls? These are Trump's dollies. He sees that. And the dollies aren't listening to him. And Trump saw specifically the three judges he put on the court. Right? Because like he thinks all the conservatives owe him. But he specifically thinks the three he put on the court literally owe him. Like literal quid pro quo. I gave you this great job, and so therefore, as for the rest of my life at least, you need to do what I say. Not just be a reliable conservative on a lot of principles, but to specifically make the rulings that benefit me, my particular political goals, me personally, me financially, and on and on and on. And he's realizing that although the courts do go with him a lot, and even in cases where I feel it's insanity, they are not so far gone that they're going to treat Donald Trump like the autocrat he wants to be treated like.